In this video, I'll introduce you to Clip Studio Paint. I will review this program from mostly a Procreate user's perspective. I'll give you a general rundown, my opinion, and some pros and cons. So as I opened up Clip Studio Paint, my first honest impression was, what the heck is this? If I didn't know any better, I thought I had just opened Photoshop. I also come from a Photoshop background, and so I was used to that user interface as well. My voice is a little scratchy, so sorry about that. So yeah, the user interface strikes me as Photoshop's edgier brother initially. I first was overwhelmed by the user interface compared to Procreate's streamlined user interface or streamlined UI. The intuitive nature of Procreate's UI is completely absent here. Clip Studio's user interface took me about 2 hours just to understand what everything was. Most of the tools you'll use is right on the screen with little buttons and widgets that are so small you'd have to have a comfortable understanding before you could comfortably use them. I'm sure you could use a hotkeys pad if you're using it on PC, but I used it on my iPad. You have the brush sets and their similar subsets under them. A really awesome option to change the texture of the paper, when you're using your brushes. That also changes the dynamics of your brushes themselves. You also have access to your brush settings like brush size, opacity, and filters like blurs, distort, noise, and sharpen. There are also similar features Photoshop and Procreate already have, but there were a few features that blew me away, which is the 3D material assets feature. This is something I didn't even know that Clip Studio Paint had, and it was really interesting messing around with it, and I can see it being useful for a lot of artists. This feature is pretty useful. You can throw in 3D primitive shapes like basic human models that you can pose in almost any way you like, in any perspective you want. You can change their position, their size, the weight of the actual model that you're putting in, their height, their head to body ratio. The other cool thing is it gives you the ability to set a light source, which is, I don't know if you can do that in Photoshop. It's been a while since I've used Photoshop, but you can do that in Procreate, but you have to obviously use your own models, and it's definitely different. This could help you establish a mood very quickly. It's such a useful tool. You'll also have the option of using shape primitives in your background to help you with the mapping of your perspective or your scene or your background, whatever it is. And it's always going to be accurate perspective because it's on a perspective grid. It's really cool. You can move the primitive shapes on their axes and however you'd like. You can move them up and down or in the sky. It's so cool. At the end of the day, I still found the app very overcomplicated. However, you also have many options to personalize your setup on screen to your liking. Now, this was a hassle in itself. You can also do this on Photoshop. In Procreate, not so much. You can use your brush and opacity, your brush size and opacity. You can move it from left to right, and there's maybe a couple other things you can do with a personalization on Procreate. But for the most part, on Procreate, you're kind of stuck with what you have. On Photoshop and Clip Studio Paint, you can personalize it any which way you want. It's kind of like having a iPhone and an Android, where an iPhone you're just stuck with what you have. With an Android, there's so many apps and launchers that you can download where you can just do anything you'd like and make it however you'd like it. That's actually what I love most about this program. You can pick and choose what you'd like and where you want it to go. I also think one of the pros is also a con, and that's having every dang icon on screen. I mean, look at all these icons and different little buttons. If you compare that to Procreate's, which is everything Procreate is under one umbrella icon, and you can find the rest of the icons, and they're so they're just in rows, and it's so organized. And again, I'm just trying to compare the two. I'm not saying one is better than the other. If you like one over the other, that's fine. I'm just saying this is what Procreate looks like. This is what Clip Studio Paint looks like. But I also think that if you understand Clip Studio like the back of your hand and you know what all the icons do, I think that you would consider that easy access. to those tools, or you know, to those settings. And I gotta say, like, that may be a detriment to some people. To some people, it's like, oh, I like that. So for me personally, I think it would grow on me. And in fact, as I use the program, it did grow on me. I gotta say, like, it took me like 2.5 hours to just at least understand where everything went. The brush library is solid, although very small initially, that comes with the program. You can actually download more brushes, of course, online, and I'm pretty sure that's really easy. The 3D objects and ability to throw characters in the scene with proper perspective is by no doubt a time saver for illustration and comic book artists. This is definitely the program you'd want to learn if you're meaning to go that sequential art, comic book slash manga route for sure. Clip Studio Paint definitely has a learning curve. I'd say it's quite the headache, and the user interface is probably more convoluted than Photoshop's. That's debatable, I'm pretty sure. But after having used it, I can clearly say I get the appeal for comic book artists and manga artists. However, if that's not your art style, I don't think it's, this is my opinion, I don't think it's worth learning, and I will personally stick to Procreate from here on out. And you know, pop on Photoshop if I need any extra features, because I'm just used to Photoshop's features, which, you know, some would argue it is pretty close to Clip Studio. I'm glad I gave it a try, and I definitely understand and respect its place in the art community, but it's just it just wasn't for me personally. And that's why I make these videos. I want to give you and myself an honest look into the program. I was curious, and I'm satisfied with what I know now, and feel even more comfortable with my choice of art program. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have any ideas for my next video, please drop them down in the comments, and I will see you next time.